Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to this wonderful webinar in this sunny afternoon here in Boston. I hope that you are all doing well and having good weather too. It's a pleasure to have you here. Latinas in Tech Boston is happy to be hosting Resiliencia de mente, corazón, featuring Lorena Leonard. We are aiming to end this session right 5 minutes before the hour. And we also plan to have a wonderful Q&A. So please, as the session is going, you can enter your questions in the little button that says Q&A on the screen, on your screen below. So first things first, let me introduce the team of the Boston chapter. From left to right, Melanie Medina, Roxanne Diaz, Susana Ortega, and myself, Paola Rios. We started this chapter in the spring, and we are thrilled to be hosting our second webinar. So who are we and what do we do? Latinas in Tech Boston is a nonprofit organization founded with the aim to connect, support, and empower Latina women. Our goal is to create safe spaces for learning, mentoring, recruitment, and for our community. To find out more about us and the Boston chapter, you can visit our website, latinasintech.org, or join our Facebook group. So now, without further delay, I am thrilled to introduce Lorena Leonard. She's a native of Medellin, Colombia, now living in Arlington, Massachusetts, and the one and only Gritty Girl. Be sure to check out her amazing blog. Lorena, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. Do take it away.
Paola, thank you so much. Y muchísimas gracias a Latinas in Tech for inviting me to lead this workshop. Hola, amigas. I am so happy to be here and be able to have the opportunity to talk to you about resilience today, because this is a skill that has been transformative for me. And I hope that the tools I will be sharing with you today, which are all they are evidence-based and they are, backed by scientific research, decades of scientific research. I hope that these tools will give you a sense of self, empower you to be more comfortable with being resilient and being able to kind of take control of situations that otherwise would seem uncontrollable. So I'd like to start, I'm going to share my screen, and I would like to start with you talking about, let me share this 1 second. Can everybody see my screen? Paola, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I'd like to start talking about mental illness, because this is a topic that even today, we still consider taboo. Nobody really talks about it, despite how common it is in the United States. It is so common that 1 in 5 adults live with a mental illness. I mean, think about this. Chances are that either you or someone you know is living with a mental illness as we speak, yet nobody really talks about it because it's still such a taboo topic. And recently I came across a statistic which really bummed me out, and it said that on average, it takes 11 years before a person who is experiencing mental illness goes out to seek professional help. I mean, 11 years, that is unbelievable. It's really sad that this is, the state of mental health today in the United States. Mental illness is also more prevalent in women. So I want to make sure that we are talking about adults. This is everybody that is 18 years old and older. The data I'm giving you does not include anybody younger than 18. That's a whole other animal. But it is more prevalent in women. And for us in the Latinx community, 17% of us have identified as living with a mental illness. Now, 17% may not sound like a big number at all, but I want to put this into perspective. We're talking about 10 million people. This is more than the population of the entire New York City. So 10 million people of us Latinx people have identified as having a mental illness, but only 32% of us, of those 10 million people, actually receive treatment. So there's a big discrepancy here. Now, notice I'm only talking about, these 10 million people, the 17% only being the people who have raised their hands and said, yes, I have a mental illness. This doesn't include the people who still suffer in silence, who have not identified living with a mental illness. And, there are many reasons why why us in the Latinx community experience mental illness and why we are not seeking the treatment that we need. And there are social cultural dynamics at hand here. For example, if you are if you're an immigrant, as I am, you may be exposed to challenges having to do with integration into the new American culture, language barriers, a culture that you do not understand, a system that you do not understand, and it is difficult to navigate. You have families and friends that you have left behind in your countries throughout Latin America. Also, within our Latin American countries, there is a history of social and political unrest. So we bring a lot of trauma with us into the new culture. If you are first generation, for example, you could be dealing with a lot more responsibility, being the daughters, sons and daughters of parents who are from the countries in Latin America, and it's your responsibility to help them navigate this new culture. I mean, who of you has been, the translator for Mami and Papi? I know I have been. Yeah, I see some people raising their hands. Certainly not just the translator, but the person who helps them navigate the American culture. There's also, the dynamics of being in this dual, having a dual, the challenge of being born in the United States, so being American, but also being raised in a Latino family, and those dynamics of being American but not American enough because you're Latina, or being Latina but not Latina enough because you were born in the United States. So there's a lot of dynamics at play here that add to the stress of within ourselves that lead to mental illness. In addition to that, we don't talk about it because while mental illness is stigmatized across the United States, it is extremely so the case for us Latinx. What happens is that, our family may feel embarrassed or ashamed. It is a sign of weakness. For us Latinas, we're taught that we are supposed to be strong, that we are supposed to handle or multitask and handle many things on ourselves, and we don't ask for help. If we are not taking on as many tasks as is given to us, we're seen as weak. If we are searching for help, we are seen as weak. And so while, we can be very proud of counting ourselves being, very strong women, in Colombia we have a saying, we call ourselves somos muy berraquitas. This means that we're really strong, or like in Mexico, for example, chingonas. We can wear that badge very proudly and rightfully so, right? But at many times it's to the detriment of our mental health. This could lead to stress, anxiety, depression, etc. So because of these dynamics, it's easy for us to fall into mental illness and not come forward to receive the help that we need. So COVID-19, we're under circumstances never before seen, at least not in our generations, and it's causing huge mental health impact across the board, not just for us Latinx, but for everybody in the world. And in the United States, it's really pushing our country to a mental health crisis. I mean, we are fearful that we're going to catch this disease, this illness. We are being isolated. There's death everywhere. I mean, you look at the news and either we know somebody who has passed away from COVID-19, or we're reading about the many people that have died due to the virus. So this is generating widespread psychological trauma. There have been different foundations and different organizations that are tracking the mental health impact of COVID-19. And one of them is the Kaiser Family Foundation. You're probably familiar with them. And in a poll that they conducted recently, they showed that this past April, they had a 1,000% increase in people registering emotional distress due to the pandemic. So this is 1,000% increase from where they were during the same time last year. Also, there is a federal emergency hotline that is specifically for people in emotional distress, and they registered 20,000 people, coming in, texting the hotline, saying, identifying that they have a mental illness, that the pandemic is causing them emotional and psychological distress. And the Family Kaiser Foundation, actually, the poll is found that nearly half of the U.S. population is reported having their mental health being harmed by coronavirus. Other factors contributing to the stress, as if it wasn't, as if the pandemic wasn't enough, we're dealing with social unrest. Civil rights are being violated, which has caused the galvanization of the Black Lives Matter movement. This affects particularly our friends in the Black community, but also it affects our own. It affects our Afro-Latina community, Afro-Latinx community. It affects us specifically too, being people, considered brown people, because we are under attack from a xenophobic and racist, political agenda at hand. Their policies that are going out all the time. You hear the news and about DACA being, attacked, etc. So we're living in this environment that is just fertile and ripe for mental illness. So I'd like to tell you a little story about myself. This is a very personal story, and this is so that you can get to know me a little bit better and understand why it is that I'm here talking to you about resilience. And so I just want to warn you that there is some graphic violence in this story. So if this is not comfortable for you, I encourage you to mute your computers for the next 4 minutes or so. But for those of you staying on, here we go. So as Paola mentioned, I am originally from Medellin, Colombia. I was born there, and I was being raised there during the 80s, the 1980s. And if you're familiar with Colombian history, this is the height of the drug war, car bombs, killings, etc. And Medellin in particular was a very violent, very dangerous city to be in. It was so violent that it had been dubbed the murder capital of the world. That's how bad things were in Medellin during the time that I was growing up there when I was a child. So I'm about 10 years old, and I live in a suburb of Medellin in a very impoverished neighborhood. The conditions in my house, and it's really not a house, it was a tiny little apartment that I affectionately called the pigeon coop, because it was really that small. And I lived there with my parents and 2 younger sisters. And the conditions in our apartment are critical. We have an infestation of mice and cockroaches. Our bathroom is semi-functional. It doesn't have a door, so there's no privacy. We have a toilet that doesn't even have a tank, so you can't flush the toilet. So we fill up a big bucket of water to flush down the toilet. There's no sink to wash up after we use the toilet, so we have to use the slop sink in the kitchen. And we have to shower in icy cold water because there is no hot water. We cannot afford it. In addition to that, we also have our electricity is really like a catastrophe just waiting to happen. We don't have electricity inside the walls. Instead, it is like this web of wires that hang from the ceilings, and they creep down the walls like vines of poison ivy. So if you touch it, you could get electrocuted and really hurt yourself. But beyond what is happening in the house, beyond the difficulties in my home, the violence that is outside is beyond words. Despite this, I spend a lot of time playing outside, and any time of day, whenever there isn't any school, this is where I am with my sister and our friends, playing every day, every night. And on this particular night, I am outside. It's about 7 p.m. and we're riding bikes. And my sister and I have a bike that we share. So I'm standing in the middle of the street, and I'm waiting for my sister to come back with our bike so that I can take my turn. And as I'm standing waiting there on the street, I notice a man walking toward my direction. He's on the sidewalk and he's walking very casually and he's walking towards me. And I notice a second man who is walking in the opposite direction and he's walking on the street. Also a man that I don't recognize. I don't know who these men are. I've never seen them in the years that I have lived, the 10 years that I have lived in this neighborhood. The man on the sidewalk pulls out a gun and shoots the man that is walking on the street. He falls to the ground, and my immediate reaction was to jump out of the way because I didn't want his blood splattering all over my legs. The man with a gun shoots him 2 more times in the head. And at this point, I am completely paralyzed. I cannot move a muscle. I can't say a word, nothing, no screams, nothing. And I'm pretty sure I can't even breathe in this moment. The only thing that is happening is that I am so focused on the blood that is pooling from this man's head that is coming and creeping, coming closer to where I'm standing. After this, everything is a blur. I don't remember anything else about this incident. I don't remember if anybody came to get me or what happens. This is all that I can remember. But 2 years later, my family and I leave Medellin, Colombia, and we come to the US. We migrate here and we resettle in the Boston area. For years to come, I will be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, from anxiety and depression, leading to 2 attempts against my life, one during high school and one during college. But it isn't until almost 18 years later, after these incidents in Colombia, that I seek the psychological help that I so needed to really deal with my demons, to deal with the post-traumatic stress disorder and help myself, become better and get rid of the nightmares and the anxiety and the self-consciousness that doesn't really allow me to thrive. And by sheer grit and resilience, I am able to beat the odds. Not only am I able to build, the courage to face the world, but I am also able to thrive. So not only do I survive my circumstances, do I, survive adversity, but I am also a thriver. And this is what led me to build Greedy Girl. 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, I created Greedy Girl with the goal of galvanizing women and young girls to build resilience and to build grit, because these are the cornerstones of a fulfillful, successful, and happy life. And this is why I'm here talking to you today about this. So let's jump into resilience. I feel like resilience is one of those buzzwords that the pandemic has made even more popular. But do we really know what resilience is? So resilience is the ability to navigate adversity with greater skill and thrive in challenging moments. It is really our capacity to manage strong feelings. It is, for when something is happening to us, instead of reacting towards an adverse moment or a stressful situation, resilience helps us calm down and be able to navigate that stressful moment in a more skillful way. So when we talk about resilience, or when I think about resilience, I like to ask myself, during a moment of stress, how do I want to show up for myself in this moment? How do I want to show up for others in this moment of stress? And so I encourage you to think about that same question, because resiliency really is a call to action for us to rise to the challenge and seize an opportunity for growth. Because through resiliency, we can actually take a bad situation and change it to make it an opportunity for us to grow at the end of this situation. So we have different tools that we can use to build our resiliency, and I will talk about those tools in a minute. But I think it's worth saying that resiliency is self-reliant. So when we are faced with situations that more often than not are, beyond our control, we have the control within ourselves to manage how we react to those challenges. So resiliency isn't passive. It requires work and it requires practice. It is a skill. So like any skill requires practice. So think about the skills that you have honed to be good at the work that you do. So I'm a marketer by day. And so some of these skills was that I had to learn, you know, and practice and hone. And through the years, I became really good at it. You know, storytelling is a skill that I'm very good at. Finding, you know, how to talk to consumers about products and services that I'm trying to, you know, market to them, or, you know, doing research, you know, market research. So these are all skills that I learned along the way. So you have skills of your own that you have learned along the way as well. But with resiliency is the same thing. So resiliency is the same thing. It's a skill that requires practice. It is not passive. But there are tools that we can use to practice this on a regular basis to help us really become confident enough within our own resiliency that we can call upon it when it's needed. So through the tools of calm, clarity, and connection, there are more tools, but these are the ones that I want to focus on today. This is how we are going to be building our resilience. So when we talk about calm, sorry, before we go into the first tool, I want to talk to you about a person whom you might be very familiar with. His name is Dr. Marty Seligman. And if you do not know who Marty Seligman is, I encourage you to go Google him because he is a fascinating man. So he is known as the father of positive psychology. He invented what is now called positive psychology. And he conducted a 30-year research on resilience. And in his research, he found that there are pillars that make resilient, of what make resilient people. And he calls this the Perma Model, where PERMA is an acronym for positive emotion, for engagement, for relationships, and for meaning, and for accomplishments. So in his model, basically, positive emotions is basically the feelings of gratitude, of love, and engagement is about how involved we are in the work that we do. It could be like something that really drives us, that makes us feel really good about what we do, the work that we do, whether it is, you know, helping others, whether it is, you know, if you're an engineer and this is what you devote yourself to and you really enjoy it, you love your work, this is what engagement is about. The other component is relationships. So it isn't about the quantity of relationships you have in your life, but it is about the, you know, the quality of these relationships. How close are you to the people in your life? Because when we are experiencing a difficult time, when there is time of adversity, relationships are probably the most important aspect for you to build your resilience. They are the people that we go to when we are in need the most. Finding meaning also is very important. So this is the M in PERMA. Meaning is the meaning that we get from the things that we do. Finding something that is bigger than ourselves. Meaning in maybe it's faith, maybe it's your religion, maybe it's meaning in teaching others or helping others, or meaning in you know, the work that you do. And also a sense of accomplishment. Accomplishment is very important. So it isn't just important to work hard, and you know, we all pride ourselves for working really hard to achieve X. So achievement and accomplishment have to be celebrated. So one of the key findings for Dr. Seligman was this idea of post-traumatic growth. And the idea is this. So basically there are three responses in which people choose when dealing with extreme adversity. So they don't choose it, they just, you know, behave in one of three ways. When dealing with extreme adversity, there is, on one end, there are people who will fall apart to PTSD, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder. They will fall apart to depression and even suicide. And these are the people that don't do anything about the situation that is happening. They just basically crumble. in the middle, where this is where most people are, these are the people that first react with symptoms of depression, of anxiety, but by measures of physical and psychological means, they are back to where they were before the trauma. And this is where resiliency comes in. These are the resilient people. You know, they deal with anxiety, with depression, with post-traumatic stress disorder, if you will, but they're able to get themselves back to where they were before the trauma occurred, before the adverse event occurred. And then there are people on the other side who show post-traumatic growth. These are the people who also first experience depression and anxiety and even full-blown post-traumatic stress disorder, but within a certain period of time, they are able to bring themselves back, not only where they were before the trauma, but feel better than they were before experiencing this trauma. So these are the people that are experiencing post-traumatic growth. And this is where I want you to be. This is where I find myself being after experiencing such trauma in my life, and through building grit and resilience was able to put myself in a situation that was better than where I started. Now, the reason why I chose to tell you the story about myself that I told you is because this is an extreme scenario. And in this extreme scenario, I think it makes the case for why building resilience is so important and why it actually works. Because trauma, let's face it, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter the degree of the trauma that you have experienced. It doesn't matter the degree of stress that you are experiencing in whatever situation. What matters is how you are feeling internally, how it's affecting your mental health. So it could be as drastic as experiencing violence through a war, or it could be as, less traumatic as, breaking up with your boyfriend, something like this. It still can be very traumatic, and they both are different levels, but you can experience the same things, loss of sleep, loss of appetite, weight loss, just depression, all of these different factors that affect our mental health. So the benefits of building resilience include, kind of increasing our well-being, and we become more optimistic. And if we are more optimistic, we are happier. We are able to reduce and prevent depression and anxiety. And it results in fewer substance abuse and mental health diagnoses. It also improves our overall physical health. Imagine that, yes, it's important to exercise, of course, and to, eat healthy, but by building resilience, you're improving your physical health. That to me is amazing. So let's talk about calm. So calm is the first tool that I want to focus on, because this one is, for me at least, is the easiest that we can, practice. And we can finding calm is really talking about centering. You can call it whatever you want to call it. You can call it centering, you can call it balancing, you can call it realignment, you can call it homeostasis, or just coming back to neutral. Calm is, for example, there is an adverse situation, there's a stressor, and then, our system goes into overdrive. But by using the breath, we're able to calm ourselves down and come back to home bases. So we have, when we breathe, we don't really think about breathing, right? This is like an unconscious thing that happens, just like our heartbeats. We don't think about our heart beating, but it just happens automatically. The breath is the same thing. It happens automatically. We don't think about it. However, unlike the heart, our heart beating, we can control the breath. And through controlling the breath, we're actually taking control of our sympathetic response. And our sympathetic response is our fight, flight, or freeze response. This is what tells our body that something is wrong, and we jump into action, right? Well, through the breath, we're not only able to take control of our sympathetic response, which is, automatic, and it happens without control, but we can control it with a breath. But we're able to also activate our parasympathetic system. And this is the system that, kind of interferes with that automatic response of fight, flight, or freeze. And it actually helps us lower our cortisol, which is, when we are in stressful situations, our cortisol increases, making us react to the moment. It slows down our heart rate and it helps rest our body. Another benefit is that it reduces emotional intensity. So when we are using the breath to come back to center, to calm down, our anxiety level or our emotional stress is reduced immensely. It also increases our tolerance during stressful encounters. So we may be encountering a stressful situation and we're able to tolerate that situation much more than if we didn't use the breath to calm ourselves down. So I'm gonna tell you a personal example of how the breath can come into play here. So we're talking about the pandemic and the consequences that this is having to our, to our mental health. And for me, I think that the biggest stressor was actually a few weeks ago, my family and I went out to eat for the first time. So this is after the state of Massachusetts have been going through these phases of lifting the restrictions. And one of the restrictions that was lifted was that people not could go out and eat in restaurants. They could not only, first it was eat in restaurants outdoors, and then we moved into phase 3, which is you could eat indoors. And so I was not ready for any of this. I was not ready to go out into the restaurant and eat. I was certainly not, even if it was outside, but we were on a mini vacation here in Massachusetts, and we decided that we were going to go to a restaurant to eat outdoors. And when we got to the restaurant, I was having a mini panic attack because I was not ready for this. The thought of bringing a fork to my mouth that God knows how many people had used that fork and brought it into their mouths, and the potential for, catching coronavirus was kind of like eating me inside. So I used the breath to calm myself down. And I used it for one reason, and I'm going to admit the reason. We were there with our daughters, and my oldest daughter is almost 9 years old, and she is very perceptive. And I started panicking, and I saw her face looking at me like worried. Oh my gosh, what's happening to mommy? And so I made a choice at that moment. I asked myself, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up for my daughter in this moment? Am I going to be overcome by fear of catching coronavirus at this restaurant? Or am I going to calm myself down and be able to have a nice time with my family? And so for my daughter's sake, and for the sake of my family, and for my own sake, I chose to use the breath to calm myself down and bring myself back to center. I took a few deep breaths. My husband helped me take these breaths, and I was able to calm down, and we were able to sit down and have a very nice seafood meal. Now, this doesn't mean that, that we were, that we had that it was free of stress and that it was an amazing dinner. No, it didn't mean that. But I was able to bring myself back to center and continue on with my day. Now, I want to take you through a short exercise of what it means to breathe, to find ourselves into a calmer state. And this is something that I encourage you to do on a regular basis, not just when you find yourself in a stressful situation. So what I want you to do is to find a comfortable spot, whether it's sitting or standing, whether you have your eyes open or closed. I want you to first notice your breathing. And this is just your normal breathing. And now I want you to take a deep breath in, calmly, and let it go. And really what you need to do here is to just focus on your breath and nothing else. Nothing else matters. I want you to relax tension. So if you feel like you're tense, sometimes, we carry tension between our brows, just relax that. We carry tension in our jaws or in our shoulders, just relax your body, relax tension and make it effortless, and just take a deep breath in, deep breath. Let it go. So the idea is that you take these breaths consciously, that you are very consciously choosing to take deep breaths at your own pace, with your own comfort. Don't worry about how long counting breaths, how long you hold it at the top, how long you hold it at the bottom. That's more advanced stuff. The point is that you are able to do this on your own in a comfortable way. And you practice this on a regular basis when you're doing dishes, when you're folding laundry, when you're, when we go back to quote unquote normal, when you're taking the train or driving to work, etc. Because the more we practice, when we have to use it in a moment of stress, you will be at the ready to use this tool to calm yourself down and bring your body back to balance. Now I want to talk to you about clarity. And clarity really is about, finding peace in your mind. I like to use the monkey brain versus rational brain analogy, because often when we are faced with a stressful situation, it is our monkey brain that takes control of us. And our monkey brain is really is the back of our head. This is our primitive brain. And it is a primitive brain that responds to stressors and to danger. So that fight or flight or freeze response, that's really our primitive brain. And it's a good thing that we have this, because it helps us, be safe in unsafe situations. But in times of stress, when we need to behave in a certain way and navigate these stressful situations, it actually hinders us from thinking clearly and being able to react in a more rational brain. So what we want to do is, by using the tools of mindfulness and body scanning, we can bring clarity into our mind so we can think clearly, and we can become more sensitive to ourselves, to our body, how we're responding to things. So mindfulness, I think it's another one of those buzzwords that everybody uses, and nobody really knows what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is really paying attention to the present moment on purpose, with an attitude of openness, of curiosity, non-judgmental. That we just see what is happening, and we don't judge it. We don't have thoughts about it. We just take it for what it is. And that is what mindfulness is. It is being in the moment. And so I've been practicing mindfulness for, I would say, over 10 years now, before the word became the buzzword that it is today. And today we're going to use mindfulness, a mindfulness exercise, to help us get more clear in our minds. We're also going to use body scanning, which is also a tactic that helps us find more clarity and to really see the moment for what we are. The monkey brain, again, is one that comes into play during those stressful moments, and our monkey brain starts creating these stories in our head about what is happening, about what people may be thinking about us, about the world conspiring against us, and these are not true. So we train our minds to quiet that monkey brain and use our logical, rational brain to really think through these times of stressful situations. So what I would like to do is take you through a simple mindful exercise, and that is I want you to focus your full attention on something. So for me, for example, I like to focus on when I wash the dishes, for example. I go in and I wash the dishes, and instead of paying attention to, my baby whining in the background, the music playing in the living room, the dog barking at a noise outside, I am very focused on the dish that I'm washing by hand, or the pot that I'm washing after making dinner. And I think about what is happening in that moment, how the water feels in my body, how, is it cold? Is it warm? Does it need to be a little bit hotter? How the soap feels when I pour it, the sounds that it makes, the foam that is forming. And then I start to become more aware of what is happening in that moment. And in turn, it actually helps me clear my mind of all the other things that are, going on. And I have a moment to myself. It is a moment of peace for myself amidst the chaos. Equally so with body scanning is the same thing. It's about, so mindfulness is really about going internally and noticing what is happening in our bodies. You know, what is happening on the outside could be for body scanning, like how things feel to us. And internally for mindfulness is how we feel in the moment. Do I feel happy? Are things making me feel fearful? Am I stressed out? Do I feel my heart beating faster, etc.? Or you know, is this a situation that where I want to, you know, jump out and scream, or do I want to hide, etc.? So I'll give you an example of using mindfulness and how this can help us out. So again, using that, my anecdote with going to eat at this restaurant outside. And when I use mindfulness, when I use the tools of clarity, what I noticed was that inside my body, my monkey brain was taking over. I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to put in my mouth a fork that so many other mouths have had, you know, have used in their mouths, a fork that everybody else has used. For sure, I'm going to get something. I'm going to get sick. My daughters are going to get sick. My husband's going to get sick. It's all over. And so this is what I noticed happening inside my head is these thoughts. I was already making up all of these stories that I have no control over. I don't know if it's true or not. Yes, there is a risk, but the risk would be minimal. I also noticed my body temperature rising. I started getting overheated. I noticed my heart beating really fast. I noticed that my throat was being constrained, and I knew that I was having a small panic attack. But I used mindfulness to call those things out. This is what is happening in my body. This is how I'm feeling and what is happening outside of my body. These are the circumstances. I took a deep breath and I was able to come back to center and have an enjoyable meal. So mindfulness also helps us in body scanning and in clarity, helps us, you know, kind of see ourselves and the world around us for what it is, not for what we think it is. And this is why it's very important. So an exercise for body scanning would be, you know, just as you would take the breath, you always start with these exercises by doing some breathing exercises. And then you can lie down. For me, I like lying down. And you can start to pay attention to your body outside, how your body feels against the mattress or the floor that you are lying down on, the parts of your body that touch it. Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it hard? Is it a soft surface? What is it? Does your body feel warm? Do you feel a breeze if you're sitting outside in the grass? What do you hear? Do you hear birds? Do you hear dogs barking? Do you hear music? So we start to pay attention to all of these things. And the more we practice the tools of clarity, the better attuned we will be within ourselves, so that when we are faced with adversity, when we are faced with stressful situations, we can look to ourselves internally and externally to see how we are going to react to a situation, and we stop ourselves from reacting before it actually happens. And finally, this is the tool of connection. And connection is about finding purpose to others, to our relationships, finding purpose and meaning within ourselves and in the things that we do. So when we connect, you know, it's important not just to understand, to know that, you know, that to know what we're doing, but why we're doing things. This is how we connect. Because this provides a safeguard against the influx of intense emotions that can throw us off balance. So if we know why we're doing what we're doing, we're better prepared to come back to balance. And you know, some of the benefits of connecting is that we can find a solid sense of meaning. Our reactions to emotional stress are less intense, for example. We avoid burnout. So this is really important in work, you know, in a work situation, that we don't burn out as easily, and we are actually more motivated to do our work and to be more productive with the work that we do. We can increase our positive emotions. So, you know, the emotion of joy, of compassion, emotions of love, happiness. We can increase all of those by finding connection to ourselves again, connections within our relationships, and connections in what we do. And a good way to find connection is by honing in on what is called our character strengths. So character strengths is a set of 24 strengths, and there's actually a test for it that you can do. If you can find out what your character strengths are, you should hone those strengths, because this will help you connect to a higher purpose. And so I actually have a little cheat sheet here. This is my cheat sheet of character strengths. And there is a lot of them. As I mentioned, it's like 24 or 28 of them. And these are the characters that make you who you are as a person. So this could be, in the creative realm, that you could be an original person, original thinker, or bravery, that gives you bravery, and you can speak up for yourself or for others. Honesty, you value being fair and being honest and being transparent. Or you can, or you want to be a leader, your leadership strengths, etc. So all of these characters, everybody possesses them, and we have some that are stronger than others. So we have different levels of these character strengths. So it's important to hone in on these strengths, because by honing in on them, we are happier, we are more energized, we are more productive, and when, we're more aware of ourselves and what is happening when we put these strengths into action. So I encourage you to visit, so there's a website actually that you can visit, and it's called viacharacter.org. So this is the VIA Institute on Character, and you can take the test. It takes just a few minutes. It's actually really fun to do, and you can take the test as many times as you want. And if you're being really honest with your answers, you'll be surprised to see that over and over, you will come up with having the same characters that make up who you are. So there is power in knowing what your character strengths are. So I encourage you all to go in and check those out for yourselves and start implementing them right away, so that you can start connecting deeper with what you do in the relationships that you have. So I'm going to give you a personal example of actually finding connection. So there are things that we do on a regular basis that we're like, I really don't want to do that. But on a personal level, cooking for me is not something that I enjoy doing. I think I started, learning how to cook after I got married and had kids, and, we needed good food to eat. So I started cooking then, but I don't find it, I'm not a cook, I'm not a chef, and chefs may find meaning in that, and I just don't. But by finding meaning in what I'm doing, I'm able to go through that task that otherwise will be like meaningless and not enjoyable. I find joy in it. And that is, when I'm cooking, I'm not thinking about the task of, oh my gosh, this is going to take so long. I'm such a bad cook, I don't want to do this. I think about that this food is going to nourish my children. This food is going to be consumed by them, and it is going to be nutritious, and they're going to enjoy it. My husband is going to enjoy it, and I'm going to enjoy it. So I find meaning in what I'm doing, and that makes the task more bearable, if you will. Another example could be, being a manager, working in an environment and having a team. And sometimes I would find myself being very, very busy at work, and with very little time to complete all of the tasks that I had in. But I always devoted time to my direct reports, because although I had so much to do and so many things to accomplish in the 8 hours that I was there, it was important to me to devote time, and I found meaning in devoting time to the relationships I had with my direct reports, because I knew it was a place where I can help them grow as, in their careers, and also as individuals. It was important for me to serve as a mentor and to pass on the knowledge that I had to help them grow into their roles, to help them grow in their careers. So I found meaning in taking the time to explain things, of giving them kind of the focused attention that they needed, despite me not having a lot of time to devote to this. So this is a place where you can actually do for yourself and do for others and connect, because connections within ourselves, in our relationships, it's really what's going to be, it's a huge character of strength for resilience. It's what's going to be most valuable for us. So some of the exercises that you can do to create greater connection with us, with our relationships, and with the things that we do is writing down and reflecting on what we value the most. So there's something about taking pen to paper and writing down what we value or what we want to accomplish, because it kind of like sets in our minds and it sets in our hearts and it makes it real and it makes us feel better in the long run. So writing down and reflecting on what you value the most. Do you value, a sense of security, community, happiness, a love for learning, etc.? Just write these down. Another one that I find very useful is called well-wishing. This is when we wish safety, health, happiness for ourselves and for our loved ones. And so what we have to do is, just kind of like take the time to be very intentional and bring a person to mind and wish them well, wish that person to be safe, to be happy, to be healthy. And if we do it repeatedly, it actually increases our own our own sense of happiness, our own sense of love, and it triggers compassion in us. The more we do this exercise, the more compassionate we become. As a matter of fact, there is another person that I like to bring to your attention, and this is Dr. George Vaillant, and he conducted a research. So this is the longest research that has ever been conducted, and this is a research about the good life. It is a 70-year study, and it followed, 800 plus people. And what they found is that connections, the relationships that we have, bring happiness to our lives. So what they call it the happiness equals love research study, because after all of these, 70 years of doing these studies, at the end of the day, what Dr. Vaillant found was that happiness equals love. So love comes from the connections that we have to everything that I just talked about: connection with ourselves, connections with our relationships, with the people in our lives, and connections in what we do. So I think, just to recap over here, resilience is really a core skill that requires practice. It presents us an opportunity for growth. So we talked about the post-traumatic growth, and this is where I want you to be. If you actually continue to practice these skills these tools that I shared with you, you will be able to not only navigate and to, survive adverse circumstances. I don't want you to be a survivor. I want you to be a thriver. And you can do this by implementing the tools of calm, of clarity, and of connection. This enhances, we talked about the Perma Model, the positive emotions of gratitude and joy and love. We talked about engagement, which is, being really enjoying the moment of what we are doing, like where the hours just go by and we don't even realize it because we're so focused on what we're doing and we get so much fulfillment from these things. It is about the quality of our connections, of our relationships, It's finding meaning in the things that we do and celebrating those accomplishments. And if you take nothing else from everything that I've told you about, I want you to go away with this. Happiness equals love. So if you do everything to bring love into your life, you will have a happy life, a more resilient life. And we're going to take it away for questions now. And I'm excited to answer your questions. And if you need to get in touch with me, this is where you can find me. You can find me on my blog at gradygirl.blog. You can find me on Instagram. I'd like to point out that my Instagram handle is Lorena H. Leonard, Lorena H. Leonard. H es de Hernandez. Y Instagram and Twitter are both Lorena Leonard. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Lorena. It's been so wonderful to have you with us here today. I did promise that we were going to end up early. So I want to say for everybody that contributed in the chat with your thoughts, with so many amazing resources, thank you. We really hope that we can build a community with Latinas in Tech Boston. So we will send a follow-up survey. We want to know how we're doing, and we want to know what other content materials you would be helpful for the community. And I think because we have 3 more minutes for those of you who can stay in the call, maybe I'll ask the question from Alaska. The rest of the questions we'll actually do a follow-up with Lorena on Facebook, so she can send either by video or in writing some answers to the other questions that you guys submitted. So I hope that that's okay with everyone to keep us on time. So to end this wonderful webinar, Alaska asks, from my experience, there's a little bit of guilt in seeking mental health and dealing with some issues. For example, wanting a new job when you already have one. All these things feel more ambiguous than what my immigrant parents and extended family have dealt with. I've heard other friends talk about this second generation guilt. Do you have any tactics or thoughts for dealing with this guilt?
That is an excellent question, and it's something that I have dealt with myself. I often find, I think guilt is ingrained in us Latinas. I hate to say it, but it's so true. Does it come from our religious upbringing? I don't know. I think a lot of us are like a Catholic majority in Colombia, for example, and, from the moment we step into a church or we become, churchgoers, there's guilt, you can't do this because there's guilt associated with it, etc. And I would say that it's a tough one. It's a tough nut to crack because this is systemic. This is something that has gone for generations over generations. This is not new to us. This has been going on from the time of our abuelitas and their abuelitas, etc. And what I would say to you is that you need to think about what is more important to you. You are not leading the life of everybody else. It is your life, not your mommy's life, not your papi's life, not your abuelita's life. This is your life. And you need to do what you see is best for you. So this is where resilience comes in. It gives you the opportunity to talk to your family members, to face, the questions that they are bringing to the table that make you feel guilty, to answer with resiliency. This is why I'm searching for an next job, even though I have a good job right now, and this is why I'm going to do it. It empowers you to really stand up for yourself and advocate for who you are. So this is where resiliency, I think, for me, comes into play. And you can hone it, in this instance, in talking to your family about it, or even within yourself. You can ask yourself these very same questions. Why am I feeling guilty about this? Use those tools of clarity, of mindfulness, of body scanning. How am I feeling? Like, where is this guilt coming from? What is showing up in my body as I think about looking for another job?
That's great. Lorena, once again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you today. Thank you, everybody who stuck with me through the end of this call. We're going to do a follow-up survey. We hope to see you in our Facebook group, and we hope that you join the latinasintech.org and join us and be part of the community in the future. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day and a nice weekend.
Gracias. Ciao.